Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast, your go-to source for all things mental fitness and sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, parent, or professional, you will learn as you join us to dive into inspiring conversations with those who have worked to develop their mental fitness. You will hear from people who've put in the work as either an athlete, coach, parent, or professional. In each episode, we bring you discussions and expert insights on developing resilience, focus, and mindset. Discover the concepts of mental fitness and learn how to use it to create consistent, durable confidence in both sports and life. I'm your host, Hans Schulstead. Let's get started.
Or something like that. Yeah. All right. Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we talk all things mental fitness. Pleased to be joined today by Corey Measner. Corey is a minor league strength and conditioning coach for the Seattle Mariners, and he's also my nephew. So we know each other well. Corey knows all about great dad jokes because he's learned them from me. And so we decided over Christmas to get him on the podcast to talk about his work so our listeners can learn from what he does. So thanks for joining, Corey.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your journey to get into the Mariners and what got you there and how did you even get started in strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so the start with strength and conditioning started from me being an athlete to start with. Because of that, I was pushed up to higher levels, which made me, compete a little bit better and a little bit harder. And as I got older, people started to catch up to me and I wasn't pushing myself as much. So my goal of getting into strength and conditioning was to help people learn and train properly to help them push themselves and see their goals and perform the best that they can out on the field. That has kind of stemmed into different opportunities that I've had in the collegiate realm, in professional sports, and that's got me with where I am with the Mariners right now. Yeah, so my first stop was at McAllister College, at Division III school in St. Paul. From there, I went and interned at Stanford University. I was there for a couple of weeks over the summer, and from there really met one of the guys who really was influential with my baseball journey, who worked with the baseball team at Stanford, Steve DeLustro. He helped me kind of get things set up for my next step in my journey with strength and conditioning, and actually applied for another internship with Cressy Sports Performance to be lined up for but my next step after Stanford was the University of Notre Dame. And I was there for a semester. That semester turned into a full-time gig. So I was there working with some of the Olympic sports, helping out with all the sports really during my internship. And during that, I was helping out with the baseball team during that as well. Because I got hired on full-time, I ended up not going to the Cressy Sports Performance. And then from Notre Dame, went to the San Diego Padres. That was my first step into pro ball. I actually left pro ball for a couple of years and then came back, and this will be my third year with the Mariners coming up this year.
Yeah, you've had some really cool jobs, and we as a family have gotten to benefit, getting to go to a Notre Dame football game and spring training and stuff like that. So that's been really cool to see and really cool to watch your development and watch your career take off and you take on things that you're really passionate about. So what's your core philosophy about developing strength at the high levels you're working at?
Yeah, I think the main focus is just helping guys to kind of learn and educate them what training properly looks like. I think that's the core principle there. And from there, just trying to instill good habits and good routines to help them perform the best that they can on and off the field, court, wherever they're performing on.
Okay. Well, what would you say, at the level that you're at, is the biggest difference in physical preparation and mindset? What have you seen, that maybe is a small but significant difference between a major league and a minor league player?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that the minor league players have a little bit less time with different people. So they have a
Uh-huh.
little less voices in their head while they're going through things. And so it's a little bit easier to kind of educate them and build that relationship with them.
Uh-huh.
Whereas the more veteran players who've been around a lot have obviously been around more people, heard different voices,
Uh-huh.
more philosophies to kind of help change how they
Uh-huh.
train themselves. So it's
Uh-huh.
more about building relationships with them than it is about like the education part of it. So I use that relationship part to start and kind of open up that door of as a way of communication to make sure that they know that they can trust me. I have what's best for them in mind.
Okay. Well, and a little question that's a little off script here is since you've been in this, I guess that would mean like over, I mean, it's what, somewhere between 10 and 15 years.
Yeah, we're
And
coming up on 15 years, I think, this year.
yeah, so you have obviously been aware of all the stuff I've done. How have you seen the view of, mental fitness and training change throughout your career?
I think there has been more focus on mental training as the years have gone, as I've been in sports more. There's more, mental skills coaches in sports as the years have gone. The athletes themselves are using them more often now too. Whereas
Uh-huh.
it was a little bit, I'm sure there was a little bit more of a stigma to start. Um,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's developed more where a lot of athletes are using it more often.
And do you notice a difference in the training or like the way that athletes use their physical training and how like it affects their approach, like the mental part affects their approach to their strength training?
Maybe to an extent, I think a lot of things stem from consistency and building routine. I think there's like a fine line, especially in baseball, of routine and superstition. And I think a lot of guys have kind of developed more on that front where they're building good routines, whether it's in the weight room or outside of the weight room. And I think that's where the weight room kind of helps that is having that good routine instilled to make sure that they're feeling prepared and ready for anything that really comes at them, whether it's on the field or off the field, and making sure that they're feeling strong and healthy no matter what. And I think that routine part kind of like goes through all realms, whether it's in the weight room, outside of the weight room, mental skills, whatever it might be.
Oh, so you've seen superstitions in baseball?
Oh yeah.
So what are some of the key mental skills you've seen players use that allow them to get the most out of their physical training?
I would say just making sure that they are prepared and consistent with their routine. I think those are the like big things. Being present, especially at the AAA level where I'm at, being present where your feet are. I think those are all good things that help kind of build that routine and make sure that you're building confidence that helps you see that performance on the field.
So what is the most satisfying part of your job there?
I think aside from having a baseball field as my office, I think the cool thing is seeing them perform and
Mhm.
seeing the things that we do in the weight room help them do the things that they do on the field, whether they realize it or not.
Mhm.
It's cool for me to see some of those things translate to what they do for their job.
Oh, okay. So since your office is a baseball field, there's hardly ever a foul day. It's
Right.
always kind of a fair experience.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so tell me, like, what's the hardest part of your job?
I would say the hardest part would be the travel.
Hmm.
We're constantly traveling. It's a long season. The mental, physical fatigue is huge with the players, with myself, all around. So making sure that we're kind of balancing all things inside, outside of the weight room, inside, outside of the field to make sure that everybody's feeling good all throughout. We're keeping energy up in the clubhouse, on the field, wherever it is.
Well, and they've recently made changes to those routines for minor league teams, right? Do you feel like that's helped? Because I think, don't
Yeah,
they, there are less like road trips, and don't you stay in one place for like about a week?
yeah. So when I first started in minor league baseball, it was a combination of either 3 game or 5 game series.
Uh-huh.
And because of that, it would change where travel days are or off days were. So now it's 6 game series. Everybody has Mondays off, which is usually a travel day for some of us, but it does make travel a little bit easier.
Okay. Well, and so tell me about like helping players battle back through injury rehab and how you see players handle that test and what role do you think your job plays in that recovery?
Yeah, injuries are huge. It can be a big mental setback for a lot of guys. Very frustrating transition, a lot of uncertainty with it, with how the process is going to go, what's going to happen. All of that stuff kind of comes up. They might lose confidence. And that's kind of like where we kind of step in to use the routines that we establish in the weight room, in the training room, to help make sure that we have some goals in place that are kind of those smaller goals that kind of kickstart that confidence being built back in. And
Hmm.
then as the process progresses, using those to help continue to build that progress. We'll have some different things where we will test that we do like in spring training, which we'll use as baselines and use
Hmm.
those as kind of benchmarks for us
Hmm.
to test and kind of see where we need to get back to. So that can be a,
Hmm.
a way that we can kind of show the player where we're back to our normal and feel more confident with their training before they get back on the field.
Well, so tell me, like, so are you telling me that even major league players lose their confidence?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And get rattled by injuries?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
seen a few guys kind of go down spirals and it's hard to come back from for sure.
Yeah. And I would imagine the more serious it is, the harder it is.
Yeah, and if it's not the first one of the season, it's the second time or third time, it can be even harder to come back from and especially the I think a big step for a lot of players is being able to leave the complex in spring training and go out to affiliates or go out to the big league with the big league team. And if it's a serious injury, they end up having to go back to the spring training complex. And basically, all that they do is like 2 hours of work and then they have to sit in the hotel. And so I think that's a big thing of making sure that they are staying healthy and staying with their friends and staying with the team. Because if they have to go back, you're having to figure out what you can do throughout the day to make sure that you're mentally in a good spot for when you're ready to come back. Exactly.
And I would imagine that that's the way it is on a team in general throughout the year because you're not, I mean, you're with people that you're with every day, but they're not necessarily your family or friends by choice. So,
Right.
yeah. Well, and then that makes me wonder about another question that I didn't even think of until now, but like, I would be interested, and I think my listeners would be interested in hearing, like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like in most of sports, you hear more and more about Achilles tears. So, first, is that true? And then, second, if they're happening more frequently, why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the like ruptures and things like that, I think have been a little bit more prevalent. It could be a combination of things, whether it's, training properly and recovering properly. It can be footwear, it can be surface that they're playing on, but it has a lot to do with there's a lot of different factors that play into it. And, you got to make sure that your routine is well balanced.
Hmm.
The training part is obviously important, but also
Hmm.
recovery is just as important for that process as well.
So, at like the baseball level, and
Mhm.
like a lot of athletes and people like are really concerned about or might be like working to get like really jacked or whatever, right? Is that like necessarily like, I mean, I guess talk a little bit about the different kinds of strengths there are for athletes. Is it all the same?
Probably not as similar with the general population as it is for athletes. Athletes obviously move it very explosively
Yeah.
in all kinds of directions. And for the general population, there's not a whole lot of lateral movement that most people do. There's not a whole lot of explosiveness that people do, which happens a lot in the athletic realm is that explosiveness and that amount of force that is being used to be able to run over 20 miles an hour for some of these guys is a, a lot of force that a lot of general population people can't produce, and that's a lot of what
Uh,
a lot of these like ruptures and things are coming from is because the amount of force they can produce may not be able their muscles may not be able to withstand a lot of that force, and then you have somebody else like in football you have somebody else pushing against you, so there's force that you are able to produce and the
sure.
force that
Yeah.
they're able to produce, and you're fighting against each other essentially.
Well, so tell me, what does that mean for like the average person in terms of like, or high level athletes? Like, how important is stretching them?
I think it depends on the person. The way that we kind of run things with our philosophy with the Mariners is like we have like a specific preparation routine that each guy is supposed to go through, and depending on how their makeup is, may want them to do more mobility and stretching work than somebody else. We may want them to do more stability type work. It just kind of depends on the person. That also comes into that recovery part of it too, where like depending on that person, what that person needs, that recovery may look different, whether it's spending time just breathing, yoga, or just doing mobility or a more active recovery type of lift. Just kind of depends on the person. We want to make sure, especially at my level, that we're not undoing too many things that can lead to injury. We want to make sure that we are keeping them kind of baseline and making sure that they're able to stay on the field.
So you're telling me that you're not creating a cookie cutter approach for the whole team. Like you have to customize the workouts and stretches that you do for each player.
Right. Yeah, we might have like a template of kind of like
Sure.
similar movements, but
Yeah.
we'll fine tune some things based on the person. I think it is easier than it might seem because when players see that they're doing something different than somebody else in the weight room, they can
Yeah.
kind of understand like, oh, this is actually for me, and we're not all just doing the same thing. I think they buy in a little bit more that way, but that also
Hmm.
comes back to the education piece of it, of like teaching them why we're doing things and how that can kind of lead into their performance on the field.
Okay. Well, let's kind of shift gears and talk a little bit about like confidence and what your view of that is with the athletes that you work with, like, in relation to their body. And then, like, do you think most of the athletes you work with see confidence as a skill or an emotion? And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think it's something that you can build and
Yeah.
instill and kind of like make better. Um,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's also something that can kind of stem from a lot of things that going back to that routine of you're feeling confident because you have prepared yourself properly.
So when you've worked with like the major league guys, do you feel like they have a high level of trust in themselves?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think that trust is based on?
I
And
think
do you think it was there before they got there, or is that the reason they got there?
yeah, I think the it stems from their ability to do their sport. And I think the more success that they have, the more that confidence grows. You can tell like when they get into the zone, like a pitcher on the mound, you can tell sometimes when they get into the zone and they end up dealing. They you go deep into games and deep into the season, and they're feeling good all throughout because they've had success in the past, and that's kind of helped them build that confidence.
Okay. Well, how can you usually tell if a player is in a state of flow or in the zone? Like, what are the
Uh,
telltale signs to you?
yeah, I think things just kind of come to them. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. It's kind of hard to explain. Like you can kind of just like some of the players, one of the players that I'm thinking of right now, one of the big league pitchers, you can just kind of see the look in his eyes that he's just like, he, the way they walk off the mound, they feel confident. Their posture is in a spot where they are showing dominance. They walk off the field. If somebody is not in the flow state, you can kind of see with how they're carrying themselves, either off the field, on the field, whatever it might be. You can just tell that they're not where their feet are right now. They're not in that situation or they're thinking about something else.
So do you think you see like what role do you see for self-forgiveness and all of that? And is that
With
even anything that's like with being able to be trust yourself and be confident?
Yeah, I think it's a huge thing, especially in baseball. Like stepping off it, you have a bad at bat, stepping out of the box, stepping into the dugout
Mhm.
is a way to for you to just kind of like separate from that, spend your
Mhm.
time to get rid of that at bat and get
Mhm.
back onto the field so that your performance in that next inning doesn't hinder the performance of the rest of the game for you or the rest of the team.
Mhm.
Because if you are breaking your bat, throwing your helmet in the dugout, one, it's it's a big spectacle in the dugout. You may hurt somebody or yourself, and you know that can you're not allowing yourself to kind of come back from that
Mhm.
thing that went wrong and be able to take a step back, breathe, and get back into that next play. It's You have to be able to forgive yourself. And that was a hard thing for me when I was an athlete, is being able to forgive myself to be able to
Mhm.
get into that next play and make sure that doesn't snowball, because then it gets even harder to get back to that state, that
Yeah.
flow state.
Well, and when you talk about throwing bats and or breaking bats and throwing helmets, then to me, what often that does is now that gives the athletes or gives the athlete another thing to be embarrassed about that they have to get over. And so then it starts to spiral and get out of control. That's at least
Exactly.
what I've seen and observed. Well, and what's it like? I would imagine that in baseball, many of your athletes don't like English isn't their first language. So I assume you have interpreters, but what's that like to, have to adapt what you're doing or saying?
At my level, I'm lucky because most of the guys have been around baseball long enough and around English speakers that their English is pretty good. But for the lower levels where the guys have a little bit less of that English background, it
Hmm.
essentially becomes making sure that you can do things properly. So making sure that your form is proper. So you have to demonstrate a lot of things and maybe use somebody to help you translate. Players are really good about it. Usually we have somebody on staff that has some sort of Spanish background. What you're trying to extend to them with that communication is clear from both sides. But there's people who can help out no matter where you are. But players, especially at my level, players are usually the ones that help out the most. Obviously, the coaches can't always be there, but there's usually somebody on the team who can speak Spanish.
Well,
Hmm. Yeah, I think you have to know the person and how you can communicate different feedback with them. So like I have a player who was not like the most consistent with his routine, but I knew that I could say certain things to him and deliver it in a way where he knew that it was coming from a place of love and be in a way where I was still kind of like pushing him more than I would somebody else, or somebody else, you kind of have to kind of like lower your expectations a little bit more and be a little bit kinder with your feedback with them. Training athletes is just like training a dog. Not to say that athletes are dogs,
Yeah.
but positive feedback is just as impactful as negative feedback. If
Mm.
you're telling a dog no, no, no all the time, they're not going to know what the right thing to do is. And that's the same thing with athletes. If you're telling them every time what they're doing incorrectly,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be hard for them to understand what is the correct way to do it. And so you have to sprinkle in some positive feedback every once in a while. So when they see you come in, they're not like, oh, here comes another negative thing that I'm going to have to deal with now.
Well, and what you're saying is that really the relationships matter. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, the better the relationship you have, you're probably more likely to be able to deliver tougher feedback.
Exactly.
So, what's a piece of advice that you have gotten in your career that has been really impactful, or maybe even the best piece of advice you've gotten? And how do you use it every day?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I go back to all the time when I've been given this question is a quote that the first time that I heard it, I was at Stanford, and it was, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to what you just mentioned is the relationship piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
So especially at my level, building that relationship with guys and making sure that they know that you care how they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
showing up to watch them play in games. That was a big thing that I used to do when I was an intern is not only having that relationship in the weight room, but letting them know that you care about how they do on the field and that everything is transferring to what they do outside of the
Mm-hmm.
weight room, so that they know that what you have in mind for them is the best possible to help them perform as best as they can, and making sure that that comes first,
Mm-hmm.
because if that isn't there, if you're just spewing educational things of like, this is what you should do, this is why, they may not listen, because just like before when I talked about all the veterans who've heard all these different voices, they may think that they know better. So you want to make sure that they know that you care about them first.
Okay. Well, what do you see as a common misunderstanding or mental misstep or myth that interferes with a lot of athletes' mental performance?
I think a big thing is just relying on the internet for a lot of things, and diving into like fads and things like that. Educational part of things hasn't,
Yeah.
like, it's not always the great when you're going through school, and so people rely on quick information like going to the internet, and so you want to make sure that you're getting the right information and that you're not going down rabbit holes and fads or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're doing the best that
Yeah.
you can for your body.
What's it like to watch or be around when someone gets called up?
That's pretty cool. It's very cool. We had a big one this past year with Cole Young getting called up, and everybody essentially knew before he did. But when it's that first time, they get super emotional. You get chills just like hearing the manager tell them that they're getting called up. It's a pretty cool moment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, what would you tell people who are listening about how they can apply these high performance techniques that you've been talking about to their daily life?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just consistency. Being consistent with a routine, no matter how exciting or sexy it is, like that's going to help you build habits, and that's going to help you build confidence and momentum with your goals, and that dedication is going to help you kind of like see that progress faster. And it doesn't matter if it's in the weight room, if it's with mental skills, if it's anything. If you spend time doing it, you're going to get better at it.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing this. This was a
Yeah, no
lot of
problem.
fun. Yeah. And I'm glad we finally got this done. I look forward to watching you continue in your journey. It's been great to watch you go all these different places and realize your dream. And get to do all these cool things and from time to time watch you work. So thanks again for doing it and keep up the good work.